This meditation is dedicated to everyone who are brave enough to become ambassadors to the universe together. Avahanam samarpami Shri Guru Charan Kamalepyo Namah. Vastram samarpami Shri Guru Charan Kamalepyo Namah. There's an ET being popped in. We saw this red light come right into our circle, and then a photograph taken, and this ET is standing right beside this man, and he had permanent hearing loss since he was a teenager, and he was fixed that night by this ET. That's a true story.
Show the people.
This.
No!
I'll give you guys a quick explanation. Right in the middle of all these multicolored gumballs, there's a man with an exploding lava head.
They have to load up the ship. Hey, we got some fucking people in the desert. Everybody, get on board. Let's go. How are you getting them to manifest?
I'm not getting them to. But
how is anybody getting? How is the signal being recognized by them?
What we were talking about earlier, this conscious field of coherent thought, and this is again the most controversial end of what I'm doing. To me, it's the most interesting, also.
From being one of the most recognizable figures in the UFO community, to having his own supporters question the motives behind his initiation trainings, Dr. Stephen M. Greer is an interesting figure claiming to have found the first mummified alien, can summon UFOs or interdimensional beings on the spot, and even took a picture of one of these summoned aliens. I don't know, Mr. MacDonald, but what do you think about these allegations of being able to summon aliens?
No offense, but it sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook.
Even though he does make these sort of bizarre allegations,
That we're getting closer to the hoaxing of events to stampede the world into something that would make 9/11 look like a picnic.
Dr. Greer has been vocal since the early 90s about the existence of extraterrestrial beings and how their technology could change the very fabrication of our existence. He was also responsible for the Disclosure Project, which gathered individuals down to pilots and high-ranking military officials, revealing the existence of otherworldly mechanics, and seemed to be genuinely concerned about our government's cover-up of unidentified flying objects. But somewhere along his spiritual journey, Dr. Greer seems to have changed his ways, with people questioning the validity of many of his claims, down to questioning the reality of his close encounters of the Fifth Kind workshops, where he leads a ceremony to summon our alien brothers and sisters. It's no surprise that many people began doubting the motives behind his ceremonies, with one comment on the High Strangeness subreddit stating, "He fakes contact and bills people for money. That's how he stole millions. More of a con job," with an attached link to an article that will be later discussed in this video. It's with these speculations of Stephen Greer that had me interested in documenting this for you guys. So, welcome to the Scotch. Get your tinfoil hats on, ladies and gentlemen, and let's explore the rise and what one could call the beginning downfall of the man who can summon aliens. Chapter 1. Who is Dr. Stephen Greer? Now, there may be some of you who could give a shit about UFOs and are just casual conspiracy buffs. And now, with recent government sightings coming to light, it's a subject that has really become an even bigger popular topic of interest. But before these recent UAP reports started being delivered by the mass media, Dr. Stephen Greer was a prominent figure in ufology. In an article written in 1995 for the Yoga Journal, writer Keith Thompson would state that Greer's interest in extraterrestrial intelligence began when he was 8 years old, where Dr. Greer stated, "I had a UFO sighting. No one believed it, but I was convinced," he says. "I started collecting everything I could on the subject. At one point, I owned every book published on the phenomenon and countless magazines." He'd continued to have numerous sightings throughout his life and experiences that started to feel like they were not casual occurrences. Greer had become convinced that UFO research had grown far too dependent upon reports of personal idiosyncratic experiences, individuals whose encounters aren't witnessed by other people. He wanted to establish a method based on groups of investigators participating together. This is the idea behind CSETI, which today operates in the basement of Greer's rambling 1920s mansion in Asheville. He'd eventually stopped practicing as a medical doctor to further pursue his interest in studying the cosmos, which ultimately led to the creation of the Disclosure Project in 1993, where he would gather reliable sources by interviewing former special military personnel, down to having secret government documents. In a now non-existent website known as the disclosureproject.org, the site would state that the Disclosure Project is a non-profit research project working to fully disclose the facts about UFOs, extraterrestrial intelligence, and classified advanced energy and propulsion systems. Greer was causing a pretty positive buzz within the UFO community, so much so that on May 9th, 2001, one of the largest and most successful press conferences in the recent history of the National Press Club was completed. More than 20 military, government, and corporate witnesses to unambiguous UFO and extraterrestrial events stated their testimony before millions. Jesus Christ, what a mouthful. Since then, Greer has put out multiple documentaries, appeared on a shit ton of podcasts, has had countless interviews, and constantly promotes his CSETI workshops, especially almost convincing his followers to join his Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind training. It's with this brief background that I take you to the even juicier juicy fruit, to the speculations, to the real motive behind Dr. Greer's entire persona. Chapter 2: The Non-Profit Organization. Let's take a subject that people are passionate about, locate numerous pieces of evidence corroborating yours and their stories, and find a way to monetize it. Greer needed a way to make money by doing something that he really loves, which is disclosing the UFO topic. But remember earlier in this video when their website back in 2001 mentioned that they were a non-profit organization? Not only was that a bullshit lie, there was literally a shop on the website where you could order the video for $25 with additional footage. And their donation section back in the day was a joke with multiple tier levels, unlocking multiple amenities. Sure, let me donate $5,000 to the non-profit. The doctor still claims to not make a cent out of his non-profit organization when if you go to his website now to purchase a ticket for one of his conferences, you're met with the same tier level design back as 2001. And let's not forget the countless books he's written, countless movies with one even featuring fucking Gus Fring as the narrator. I'm pretty sure Esposito did this out of the goodness of his heart, just like Dr. Greer does this out of the goodness of his non-profit organization.
If you look at Unacknowledged, if you get the book, we have a book called Disclosure. It's 500 and some pages of transcripts of these original top secret people's testimony and documents. It's all in there.
Oh yeah, and Dr. Greer constantly says he's a scientist, which I don't believe he is. Chapter 3: The Humanoid. I first began my journey of Stephen Greer research in 2013 when the documentary Sirius came out, which honestly, I watched so many times and was fascinated with the many claims the doctor would make. The main being that they found a humanoid creature in the Atacama Desert. I legit would bring up this documentary when people would tell me that aliens didn't exist, since the film showed scientists from a prestigious university run DNA testing with inconclusive results. To Dr. Greer's defense, he did claim back in 2013 not to know what exactly was found, but the way he calls this being a humanoid creature makes the audience feel that this thing was not from this earth. At least it made me respect the guy for trying, and for coming out with the truth. But boy, do I feel stupid about recommending this documentary back in the day. This guy not only jumped the gun with his assertions about this humanoid creature possibly being alien, but an article written for CNN in 2018 revealed the mystery behind the Atacama Desert being. Dr. Greer's team, with the help of Professor Gary Nolan at Stanford University, claimed that the humanoid was possibly the mummy of an alien. At first, 8% of the DNA didn't match with the human DNA, where it would later be determined that this was because of a degraded sample. An improved analysis matched up to 98%, Nolan said. Dr. Atul Butte, who is a distinguished professor and director of the Institute of Computational Health Sciences at the University of California in San Francisco, studied the humanoid where he determined the Atacama's mutations are so rare that we haven't actually ever seen some of these before, so it's hard to imagine there are carriers out there. We do speculate that the environment where this child was developing may have played a role. The specimen was found in a town with abandoned nitrate mines, and exposure to nitrates might have caused the mutations, but it's only speculation. Chapter 4: The Self-Centered Narcissist. Don't get me wrong, folks. I'm in no way hating on the guy, merely examining his rise as a UFO so-called god and the possible downfall that myself and many others are seeing. And it's with the following UFO subreddit comment that I begin this chapter. I followed Dr. Greer's activities with enthusiasm since 2001 when he established the Disclosure Project. I read his books, watched his interviews, and listened to his meditation CDs. So it was with great excitement that I signed up for a CSETI presentation and a one-day workshop with Dr. Greer that took place on November 13th and 14th, 2009 in Costa Mesa, California, to experience and learn CSETI's contact protocol. Surprisingly, my preconceived opinion about Dr. Greer's character began to disintegrate as I listened to his presentation. It was disheartening to discover he is excessively fascinated with himself, prone to indulge in name-dropping and in bragging about his fantastic high-end and or in-the-know contacts and connections. Conveniently, there were plenty of people at hand, mostly staff, who would come forward to state that while meditating they saw this or heard that. Additionally, the large quantity of wow and oh my god remarks coming out of Dr. Greer's mouth over unseen or imaginary non-events was sadly hilarious. Oftentimes, he would point his mega laser beam at some spot in the sky and claim he was seeing a partly materialized ET craft. Of course, anyone else saw nothing, even though, according to him, many significant events were taking place that night because we were such a great group. Though I first learned about this comment on Reddit, it was supposedly posted as a review to Amazon on one of Stephen's books. Another comment of a supposed attendee or ambassadors of one of his ceremonies also states that, I agree 100% and attended the first post-COVID gathering last April near Scottsdale, Arizona in 2022. Oi, don't meet your heroes. CE5 got me into meditation 5 years ago and I really love the idea and message. But sadly, I can back up this description of Greer through experience as well. I have a feeling it's even worse now than ever before. Good original idea, maybe even some early success. But where is he now? Doesn't line up with the promotional materials. He's hard to sit through. Angry, egotistical, and you've heard everything before, polished online. That's exactly how I feel about the man. Through many recent interviews, all I hear is the same shit he's been spewing since the 90s. Only revamped and polished for today's generation. His belief system seems to have done a 180 and constantly only talks about himself and the people he knows. Vice would also do a great documentary in which they explored one of his ceremonies, and honestly, for me at least, it's really cringe. Many of these so-called alien ships he points out in the cosmos are actually satellites. There's even an article in the Washington Examiner claiming that one of Greer's summoned UFOs were actually flares, with writer Tom Rogan stating, back to January 27, 2015, when Greer's expedition claimed to have summoned 2 UFOs. Video of the sighting was posted to Greer's YouTube channel, and the incident was the first case listed on the photographic and video evidence page of Greer's website. The video description states there were no boats or ships seen anywhere in the area of the objects, and there were no jets or planes or other airborne objects anywhere near the objects before, during, or after the event. Rogan would later write that at the exact spot of Stephen's ceremony, FlightAware flight tracking data attained by the Washington Examiner suggests the latter is true. At 9:11 p.m. on January 27, 2015, a Beech 76 Duchess registered N110SU was recorded flying at 85 miles per hour off Vero Beach. This is slower than the aircraft's normal cruising speed and would feasibly allow the aircraft to deploy parachute flares or some other illumination device. The more I look into the man that once had my respect as a serious UFO researcher, the more I see a person who uses his once connections through the Disclosure Project as a means to create a sort of cult-like experience for a nominal fee. If he still claims his organization is non-profit, why would he charge people for his conferences and especially for his CE5 training that often ends in disappointment? And though I'm not calling this man a con artist, simply a guy that embellishes the stories he's been told to gain profit, the doctor does in fact feel like a self-centered narcissist with his own hidden agendas.